The topic of my presentation is related to zero energy buildings, in particular nearly zero energy buildings, and some practical aspects related to the concept of nearly zero energy buildings, and some aspects related to the practical implementation of this topic. So I will make a short introduction, followed by some definitions, concepts, and regulations related to NZEB buildings. I will present some results for a hotel building which have been obtained in Portugal as a case study. And I will talk a little bit about the evolution of the concept in the future and draw some conclusions. As it is well known, buildings are responsible for about 33% of the final energy consumption in the world. And of those 33%, a very large portion is met by non-renewable and traditional non-renewable energy, like fossil fuels, and also traditional biomass. Only 13.6% are met by modern renewables, which include bioheat, renewable electricity, solar, and geothermal heat. We can discuss if traditional biomass may be or not be considered as a renewable source, but that is another question. Of course, part of traditional biomass is renewable, but not 100%. Of all the energy spent in buildings, 77% are spent for heating. That means heating and cooling, space heating and cooling, generating hot water, and cooking. And more than half of these are met by fossil fuels, 53.9%. Only 10% are met by renewables and modern renewables. When speaking about energy savings and using the designation of zero energy buildings, we may ask this question: is zero energy possible? Well, there was a famous railway engineer in the UK, Brunel, who said that nothing is impossible when you are an engineer. So assuming we are engineers, what would be the strategy to follow to achieve zero energy in buildings? The first approach is related to the reduction of energy needs. We can reduce the needs of energy by not spending so much, or as an extreme situation, by not having any people in the building. Of course, this is not an option because buildings are made for people. But if you remember, some of the first measures to lead to energy savings were related to changing set points, reducing the set point of ambient temperature when people were not in the buildings, and so on. So the first part of the strategy to achieve zero energy is to reduce the energy needs. Then we can also use renewables, renewable sources of energy on site. This means using solar energy systems, wind energy, biomass systems that are able to meet the demand of energy. We will look at the building as an energy system which exchanges energy fluxes with the surroundings. So it will receive energy from the outside, it will receive electricity from the grid, it will eventually deliver some electricity to the grid if we produce electricity on site, for instance with a solar PV system, and we will take into account all these energy fluxes to achieve a zero balance. I will talk in a few moments about this definition of zero balance. So, looking again at the possibility of achieving zero energy, there are some studies that led to a conclusion that that is not possible in every building. There are a few questions, namely the available space to install solar energy systems, for instance. And this graph I'm presenting is showing, let me point out, this is the number of floors in the building, and this is the percentage of buildings that are able to meet zero energy standard. And as you can see, if you have one story, it's much easier to achieve zero energy than if you have 3 or 4 stories, for instance. This is the result of a study made in the USA. Another issue, besides the available space, is the cost of obtaining zero energy. So it may be possible, but it may cost too much. And that is another issue I will try to address. Another important aspect is that if we look at the European Union building stock, we find that most of the buildings are quite old. In fact, either residential or services buildings have more than 50 years of age, a large part of them, more than 40%. And many of those buildings existed and were built before energy regulations were in place. And this means that the standards are not meeting the zero energy requirements. So there is a huge potential for energy saving in those buildings if we look at the renovation of the buildings. Now looking a little bit to the regulations and to definitions of zero energy buildings, there is a difference between zero energy building and what we call a ZEB and a nearly zero energy building. A zero energy building is seen as a net zero energy building. This means that if we make a balance between the energy exchanged with the outside, taking into account the energy we may produce in the building and the energy needs, the energy we actually consume, a net zero energy building has a zero energy balance over the period of 1 year. So energy needs are equal to the energy produced to satisfy those needs. Another concept is the concept of nearly zero energy buildings, which has been introduced recently in the last 10 years by the European Commission. And this means that we do not have a zero balance. In a nearly zero energy building, or NZEB, we have a consumption which is slightly higher than production. Of course, the term slightly is very vague. We do not know exactly what is slightly. It can be 1% higher or it can be 10% higher. And this is a question I will address. Actually, when we talk about nearly zero energy buildings, we are saying in a different way an existing concept, which is the concept of low energy buildings. So actually saying that we have a near zero energy building or saying we have a low energy building is actually the same thing. And the term, the designation of NZEB is more due to a marketing issue than a technical issue. Okay, the energy balance related to the building takes into account not the final energy, not the useful energy, but the primary energy associated with all the energy fluxes in the building. So to convert final energy, which is the energy we pay, to primary energy, we need conversion factors. Those factors here and here, which depend on the energy source we use. So each regulation and each country may define its value. For instance, if we look at energy consumption, electricity consumption, we can use a factor which depends on the way each country produces its own electricity. So it may be higher in some countries than in others. The regulations allow each country to define its own factors. Okay, for instance, in Portugal, we have a factor for electricity of 2.5, which means we consider an efficiency from production to the consumption of electricity of 40%. Okay, to complicate a bit the definitions, there is also the definition of zero carbon buildings, or nearly zero carbon buildings. I will concentrate in this presentation on zero energy, not on zero carbon, but a similar approach could be followed. Zero carbon is used in many regulations, for instance in UK for residential buildings and in other countries. But the European Union is focusing on zero energy rather than zero carbon. This is a graph that represents the energy production in a building compared to the energy consumption. Okay? If we have a zero energy balance, we follow this straight line, which is the equality line. So in any point in this line, the energy consumption is equal to the energy production. So we have a zero energy balance. For a given building, if we start with an existing situation, we may achieve a lower energy consumption by using passive design, some efficiency measures, replacing energy systems by more efficient ones, and then we will eventually reduce the consumption to this level. Okay? This consumption, this level of energy we need, can be compensated by production of energy on site using renewables. And so we would achieve the zero balance, which corresponds to this point. Eventually, we may achieve a very high production, and we would have a positive balance in this area. In this area, we would have a negative balance. So NZEB, or nearly zero energy, means we are a bit below the line. Okay? That's the situation of an NZEB. Looking now to the existing regulations and in particular the European Union regulations and its evolution and the present situation. In the beginning of the century, we started with the first directive called the European Performance of Buildings Directive in 2002, which established the process of certification, energy certification in buildings. And after that, the member countries, they all applied this directive with different variations. And we have an energy certification process going on as usual since then. Let me just drink a little bit. We started hearing and talking about zero energy buildings back in 2010 with the recast of this directive, which is often called DPBD2, where the objective was to achieve in a number of years the zero energy building standard, or a situation close to zero energy. Nearly zero energy was then defined. Recently, in 2018, this directive was rewritten, and namely, it defined the need to achieve NZEB, or nearly zero energy, in new buildings. This should start for public buildings in the beginning of last year, 2019, and should be applied to all new buildings starting in the beginning of next year, 2021. The same directive also mentioned that renovations in buildings should be looked at, and namely, all the member countries should transpose this directive to their own laws, looking the possibility of establishing NZEB values for renovations. But it was mentioned that these values, these limits of energy consumption, should take into account the cost effectiveness of the renovations. Okay, the situation now is that most countries, as I will show you, don't yet have limits defined for NZEB buildings. Most buildings will not be affected so soon by the regulations, because it's not clear if renovations will be or will not be included in the country regulations, namely in the EU. And as more than 90% of the building stock will be renovated and not new, so the effectiveness of the regulation will not be very high, except if renovations will be included. So the NZEB levels have not been yet defined for many countries, neither for new buildings, neither for renovated buildings. And looking at values for NZEB buildings, values of energy consumption, it is important to analyze the levels of energy consumption, what we may consider as near zero in renovations, taking into account the climatic zones where the buildings are and the type of building. So I will try to address a bit of those issues in the remaining of my presentation, okay? So I will present a case study which was developed in Portugal for a hotel building, which is a typical 4-star hotel building located in the south of Portugal, which was built back in 1966 and suffered a major renovation at the end of the 20th century in 1996. So this hotel has an overall floor area of about 10,000 square meters. It has the typical services of a hotel, and the energy supplied to the hotel is made of a combination of electricity and natural gas. So electricity is used for lighting and also cooling and other, of course, other applications. Natural gas is used in boilers. So the energy systems include ventilation, include a gas boiler, a set of gas boilers that produce hot water used both for sanitary purposes and also for heating space heating in winter. And there is an electrical water chiller that produces cold water to cool the space during the summer period. This hotel was subjected to an energy audit during a period of 1 year. And through the energy audit, we identified an index of energy efficiency, which is equal to 214 in kilowatt hour of primary energy spent per square meter and per year. This is the index that is used in the regulation for to establish the energy consumption of the building and to compare with zero energy levels or nearly zero energy levels. This value takes into account only the regulated consumptions. What are regulated consumptions? These are the ones that are taken into account in the regulations, because there are some consumptions that don't have limits in the regulations, like, for instance, the energy spent in kitchens or in laundries. They are not regulated by the standards. This graph shows the consumption of electricity and gas, natural gas, in the hotel throughout the year. So as we see in summer periods, we have a higher consumption of electricity because we use the electrical chillers to produce cooling. There is another graph which shows the evolution of the consumption of electricity, which more or less follows the increase in temperature during the summer period. Okay, what we developed after the audit was a simulation model using a well-known computer program, which is Energy Plus, and an interface of this program, which is called Design Builder, which allows to describe the building in terms of geometry, in terms of operating conditions, construction characteristics, and energy systems. And this model was calibrated by means of inserting the real schedules of use of the building, lighting, occupation, and so on. So we were able to produce realistic model results. With this model, we were able to identify the different uses of energy in the hotel. And you have the different shares of energy use in the building. Heating and cooling are responsible for 31% of the consumption, and only 57% of the energy consumption is regulated, corresponds to regulated consumptions. So you have, for instance, as I mentioned, the kitchen and laundry and other equipments which are not regulated consumptions. Okay, the regulated consumptions are related to space heating and cooling, sanitary hot water, ventilation and lighting. So these are the ones that I will talk about in the coming figures. So if we compare the model results with the audit, the real consumption results, we obtained a fair agreement. So I will pass this slide on. So the next step of the case study was to develop several parametric analyses, analyzing with the model the influence of changing the conditions of the building in a future renovation. So we consider different energy efficiency measures and eventually the use of renewable systems. I will not go into the details of this table. You will have access to this presentation and other information I will show you later on. But I'm going to divide these measures in three groups, okay? The first group corresponds to replacing lighting systems by more efficient lighting systems using LEDs, by adjusting the ventilation and improving the ventilation, for instance, by using variable volume fans instead of conventional fans with the constant speed, by changing the set point temperatures from 22 in winter and 24 in summer to 20 in winter and 25 in summer, and by limiting the water consumption in the rooms by reducing the flow of water in the taps. So this is the first set of measures. Another set of measures corresponds to improving the efficiency of the energy systems. This means basically replacing the boilers by condensing boilers, which are much more efficient, and by replacing the air-cooled chillers that produce cold water for space cooling in summer by more efficient chillers. The third set of measures includes following the previous ones and adding the use of renewable systems. In this case, we considered the use of solar thermal and solar PV systems. So we considered two options for the solar thermal system. One, a system with 63 square meters of solar thermal collectors, normal flat plate collectors. And the second option, the same area, but with more efficient flat plate collectors. The solar PV system, we considered two options also, one with 384 square meters of solar PV panels, and another one with a similar area and a higher efficiency, so the nominal electrical capacity of the first is 60 kilowatt and of the second is 68 kilowatt of electricity. So we analyzed the effect of those measures in the energy consumption and the energy balance of the building. Okay, so this graph shows the energy produced in the building or generated and the energy needs, the energy consumption in kilowatt hour of primary energy per square meter per year. So the previous value I showed, which was obtained by the model for this building, is 219 kilowatt hour per square meter per year. So this is the value of the energy consumption if we do not renovate the hotel. If we adopt the first set of measures, we will achieve lower values. For instance, if we regulate the water consumption only with that measure, imposing a maximum of 34 liters per person in each room per day, we achieve a quite lower, significantly lower value of about 200 for the primary energy consumption per year, per square meter. If we adopt the first set of measures, including the reduction in water consumption, the change to LED lighting, ventilation regulation, and changes in set points, we will reach lower values of energy consumption up to 160 kilowatt hour per square meter per year. If we adopt the second set of measures by replacing the boilers and the chillers, we achieve an even lower level, let's say a third level, which is going down to 120, 130. Then, if we consider the use of the renewable systems, the solar systems, we may obtain an energy production of around 30, 40 kilowatt hour per square meter per year, which means that we end up at this level still a bit far from the zero energy, which would be this point here, but reaching a level which can be considered as a achievable level using existing technology. So we are only looking at replacing existing systems by more efficient ones and using existing solar energy systems. We also made a study of the economic results of those measures adopted for the renovation of the hotel, and we calculated the life cycle cost for a period of 20 years of those renovation measures. And we concluded that for the different sets of measures, the different packages, there is not a big difference in the life cycle cost. If we keep the same situation, there is no renovation, the life cycle cost is much higher than the cost of any of the renovation measures. In particular, the optimum results are obtained for measures that do not include the change in energy equipment or the use of renewables. The optimum is obtained only with changes in lighting and ventilation and set points and water consumption. We also made an analysis of the return on the investment by calculating the payback period of the renovations that we were considering. So in this case, we obtained variable payback periods. The best values are around between 2 and 4 years. For the measures that do not include changes in equipment or installation of renewable systems, if we install renewables, we will have values of payback periods of about 10, 11 years, which correspond to those points. So further studies that we need to make to establish nearly zero energy values have to consider the influence of climate. So we made a study which compares the same hotel building, exactly the same building, with exactly the same occupation patterns located in 3 different climates. The base situation, which was in Portugal, in Faro, another situation in London, in UK, and another in Athens, in Greece. By comparing the results, we have an idea about the influence of climate, and of course, we expect higher consumptions in London. So the final energy consumption in the same hotel would be about twice in London compared to Portugal. And in particular, in London, we would have a very high share for heating, which represents about 50% of the total final energy consumption. In Greece, we have a higher consumption than in Portugal, and we have a higher weight for space cooling and space heating than in Portugal, which is a result of the climate. If we look at the energy consumption indexes, the base values, which are the values for the hotel without renovation, as it is, are 219 kilowatt hour of primary energy per square meter per year, compared to 2080 in London and 2056 in Athens. If we look at nearly zero energy values, which means using the energy renovation measures we defined, like improving the efficiency and installing solar energy systems, we would achieve values which are about 50% of the base values. So around 100 for Portugal, around 140 for London, 120 for Athens. Other aspects that we need to address in the future are to establish values. The values we obtained in this case study may be considered as typical values for limits that can be imposed in the regulations for Portugal, for 4-star hotels, 4 and 5-star hotels eventually. But we also need to establish values for other types of buildings, for residential buildings, for housing, for commercial buildings, and so on. So looking at another study that shows the difference of the type of building in the results, the same hotel I showed before is here in terms of final energy consumption and the distribution of the consumption by the different uses: heating, cooling, lighting, ventilation, and pumps. If we consider a typical commercial building in the same location in Portugal, in this case, a commercial mall, we have a similar final energy consumption, although the division of consumption by uses is different. We have more lighting in a mall than we have in a hotel, but in this case, the index of energy, primary energy, final energy in this case, per square meter per year is similar. If we look at the house, a typical family house, we have, of course, a much lower consumption, and in particular, we only have energy spent for heating and cooling, and hot water. Lighting is not so significant in a house. If we look at the primary energy consumption, the values are slightly different. If we look at the commercial building, we have a higher index of consumption compared to the hotel, and this is due to the fact that the mall uses more lighting, uses more electricity, which corresponds to more primary energy spent for the same final energy. Okay, so of course, many things are still to be said. I will just say that in the future, we have to extend the analysis to include other aspects of the energy and other uses of resources in the building and in a building, in particular the use of water, materials, and consider the life cycle of the building, not only the operation of the building as we did in the example I showed. So we need to take this into account in the future, and we need to take into account a complete life cycle analysis, taking into account the total cost and the total emissions, including not only the operation, but also the construction and the disposal of the building. So, as main conclusions, looking at NZEB or nearly zero energy buildings, the regulations are late in many countries. In EU, most countries, most member countries have no standards, no definitions for the values to be taken into account. And the regulations will have a limited impact, except if they include renovations, if they include the existing building stock in the regulations. So this has not been done until now. Realistic NZEB values may be obtained with the methodology I showed for the case study, combining energy audits and building simulation. Of course, since the regulation establishes the need to make sure that there is some economic feasibility in the nearly zero energy values for renovations, we should consider market existing technologies when replacing energy systems. The case study showed that we can achieve significant reductions of energy consumption, up to 34% in final energy consumption and primary energy consumption. Those reductions may be obtained with economic benefits, so we have a positive return on investment and positive life cycle costs. And economically feasible values indicated about 50% of the initial regulated consumptions, and that was valid for the 3 climates that we analyzed. Okay, so we have achieved something, but we are still trying, and we are still far from zero energy. So in the future, we might eventually reach very nearly zero energy, and after that, we may think about zero, the actual zero. Thank you so much for listening.